Hello fam, welcome to the channel. Please don't forget to like and subscribe for more interesting stories and tell me what you feel in the comments. The November rain fell in sheets across downtown Portland, turning the sidewalks into mirrors that reflected the glow of neon signs and streetlights. Emma Rodriguez pulled her coat tighter as she hurried past the old brick buildings on Morrison Street, her canvas bag heavy with groceries she'd just bought from the corner market. The cold bit through her clothes, making her wish she'd taken the bus instead of walking. She was thinking about dinner, maybe pasta with the vegetables she'd splurged on, when she nearly tripped over him. A man sat huddled in a doorway, his back pressed against the glass of what used to be a bookstore. His clothes hung loose on his frame, and a tattered sleeping bag barely covered his legs. But it was his hands that made Emma stop. They were shaking, not just from the cold, but with a tremor that spoke of something deeper. She recognized it immediately. Her grandmother had that same tremor in her final years. "Excuse me, sir? Are you okay?" Emma crouched down, ignoring the rain soaking through her jeans. The man looked up, and Emma's heart clenched. His face was weathered and lined, his beard streaked with gray, but his eyes were a startling blue, clear and intelligent despite the exhaustion etched into every feature. He couldn't have been more than 60, but the street had aged him. "I'm fine, miss. Just waiting out the rain." His voice was rough but educated, each word carefully pronounced despite his chattering teeth. Emma glanced at the darkening sky. "The weather report says this storm's going to last all night." She made a decision that her roommate, Jade, would definitely call reckless. "There's a diner 2 blocks down. Let me buy you something hot to eat, please." The man's eyes widened slightly. "I couldn't." "You can, and I insist." Emma stood, offering her hand. "I'm Emma." After a long moment, he took it. His grip was weak, but his hand was ice cold. "William," he said quietly. "My name is William." The Riverside Diner was nearly empty at 7 o'clock on a Wednesday evening. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, and the smell of coffee and frying onions filled the air. Emma guided William to a booth in the back, ignoring the look the waitress gave them. "Order whatever you want," Emma said, sliding a menu across the Formica table. William's hands trembled as he held the laminated menu, his eyes scanning the options with an intensity that broke Emma's heart. When was the last time this man had looked at a menu? When was the last time someone had offered him a choice? "The meat loaf," he finally said. "And coffee. Black, please." Emma ordered the same, adding 2 slices of apple pie. As the waitress walked away, she studied William more carefully. Beneath the grime and the weathered skin, there was something almost familiar about his features. The shape of his jaw, the way his eyes crinkled at the corners. "How long have you been on the streets?" she asked gently. William's shoulders sagged. 7 years, for months and, he paused, calculating, 16 days. The precision of his answer startled her. "You keep count. Every single day." He wrapped his hands around the coffee cup the waitress had brought, as if drawing life from its warmth. "You don't forget the day your world ends." Emma wanted to ask more, but something in his expression stopped her. Instead, she said, "I work at the community center on 3rd Avenue. We have resources, job placement, housing assistance, medical care. I could help you." "I've tried," William interrupted, but not unkindly. "There are complications, legal issues from my past. Doors that closed a long time ago." They ate in comfortable silence after that, William consuming his food with the careful dignity of someone who'd learned not to draw attention. Emma noticed how he used his napkin, how he waited to pick up his fork until she picked up hers. Small details that spoke of a life before this one. As they finished their pie, William looked at her with those striking blue eyes. "Why did you stop? Most people walk past like I'm invisible, like I'm already a ghost." Emma thought about her grandmother, about the tremor in William's hands, about all the times she'd walked past someone in need because she was too busy, too scared, too convinced that one person couldn't make a difference. "Because you're not invisible," she said simply. "And everyone deserves to be seen." William's eyes filled with tears that he quickly blinked away. "You have a kind heart, Emma. Don't let the world take that from you." Emma left the diner that night with William's words echoing in her mind. She'd given him $20, all the cash she had, and the name of a shelter that didn't require ID. He'd thanked her with a formality that seemed out of place with his situation, then disappeared back into the rain. As she walked home to her small apartment, something nagged at her. That sense of familiarity. The way William pronounced certain words, with a slight emphasis on the first syllable. The way he'd said, "Don't let the world take that from you." It reminded her of something, though she couldn't place what. Jade was waiting up when Emma got home, sitting cross-legged on their worn couch with her laptop balanced on her knees. She was 3 years younger than Emma's 28, with purple-streaked hair and enough skepticism for both of them. "You're soaked," Jade observed. "And you smell like diner coffee." Emma kicked off her wet shoes and collapsed into the armchair. "I bought dinner for a homeless man." Jade's fingers paused over her keyboard. "Emma, we've talked about this. You can't save everyone." "I wasn't trying to save him. I was trying to feed him." Emma pulled her grandmother's old quilt around her shoulders. "There was something about him, Jade. He seemed, I don't know, lost but not broken. Like he used to be someone else." "They all used to be someone else," Jade said, but her voice was gentle. "That's the tragedy of it." Emma nodded, but she couldn't shake the feeling that William was different. That night, she dreamed of blue eyes and trembling hands, and a voice saying words she couldn't quite hear. She didn't expect to see William again. The streets of Portland were full of people living in doorways and under bridges, and she'd learned long ago that sometimes kindness was just a moment, brief and bright and then gone. But 3 days later, as Emma was leaving the community center after her Saturday shift, she found him waiting by the entrance. He'd cleaned up somehow. His beard was trimmed, his face scrubbed, and he wore a different jacket, still worn but not as ragged. "Emma," he said her name like it mattered. "I wanted to thank you properly for the other night." "You don't have to thank me, William." "I do." He shifted his weight, and Emma noticed he was carrying a plastic bag. "I found some work. Just day labor, nothing permanent. But I wanted to give you something." He pulled out a small sketch, drawn on the back of a flattened cardboard box. It was her, sitting in the diner, head tilted slightly as she listened. The detail was remarkable, every line capturing not just her features but something deeper. Her expression held such gentleness, such open compassion, that Emma barely recognized herself. "You drew this." Her voice came out as a whisper. "I used to be an architect." William's voice carried both pride and pain. "Before everything fell apart. I haven't drawn in years, but I wanted you to have this. To remember that your kindness matters, that it changes things." Emma held the drawing carefully, her throat tight with emotion. "This is beautiful, William. You're incredibly talented." "Talent doesn't keep you off the streets," he said with a bitter laugh. "But maybe kindness does. You made me remember who I used to be, even if just for an hour." They stood in the fading afternoon light, and Emma made another decision. "The center has a program, help with legal issues, expunging old records. Let me at least get you an appointment with our counselor." William hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Okay, yes, I'll try." It was a small victory, but Emma felt something shift. This was more than a passing encounter. This was the beginning of something neither of them could yet understand. Over the next 3 weeks, Emma saw William regularly. He showed up for his appointment with the legal counselor, a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia who specialized in helping people navigate the system. Emma made sure he had meal vouchers from the center. She brought him coffee when she worked late shifts. Jade grew increasingly concerned. "You're getting attached," she warned one evening as Emma sorted through donated clothes, setting aside items that might fit William. What happens when he disappears? What happens when this doesn't have a happy ending? I'm helping someone who needs help, Emma said defensively. Isn't that enough? It would be if you weren't looking at him like he's some kind of project. Or worse, like he's family. The word hung in the air between them. Family. Emma's family was a complicated subject, one she usually avoided. Her mother had raised her alone, never speaking about Emma's father except to say he was gone and wouldn't be coming back. When Emma was 12, her mother had died in a car accident, and Emma had gone to live with her grandmother. She'd grown up with a hole where her father should have been, a space filled with questions no one would answer. He's not family, Emma said quietly. He's just someone who deserves a second chance. But even as she said it, she couldn't explain the pull she felt toward William. The way his mannerisms reminded her of herself. The way he gestured when he talked. The slight tilt of his head when he listened. It was probably nothing. Coincidence. The human brain finding patterns where none existed. The breakthrough came on a gray December morning. Patricia called Emma into her office, her expression serious. "I need to talk to you about William," she said, gesturing to a chair. "About his background." Emma sat, her stomach tightening. "Is something wrong?" "That depends on your perspective." Patricia folded her hands on her desk. William's full name is William James Rodriguez. 12 years ago, he was a successful architect in Seattle. He had his own firm, a family, a life. Then he made a mistake, embezzled money from a client to cover gambling debts. He served 3 years in prison. Emma's breath caught. Rodriguez, her last name, but it was common enough, lots of people shared it. Patricia continued. When he got out, his wife had divorced him and disappeared with their daughter, changed their names, cut all contact. He spent years trying to find them, fell into depression, lost everything. By the time he gave up searching, he had nothing left. That's when he ended up on the streets. His daughter, Emma heard herself say. How old would she be now? 28. 29 soon, I think. Patricia's eyes were knowing. Emma, when you registered William in our system, I ran a standard background check. I found the old court records from his divorce. His daughter's name was Emma. Emma Rodriguez. The room tilted. Emma gripped the arms of her chair, her mind racing. That's not... I mean, it can't. She couldn't finish the sentence. I don't know if he's your father, Patricia said gently. But the age is right. The name is right. And Emma, I've been doing this work for 15 years. I notice things. You two have the same eyes. Emma walked out of Patricia's office in a daze. It was impossible. Her mother had told her that her father had abandoned them, that he'd chosen not to be part of their lives. But what if her mother had lied? What if she'd been protecting Emma from something darker? A father in prison, a father who'd betrayed their trust. Or what if her mother had been protecting herself? What if she'd run, taking Emma with her and never looked back? She found William at his usual spot, a bench near the waterfront where he sometimes sketched. He looked up as she approached, a smile brightening his weathered face. Emma, I was hoping you'd come by. Patricia said the legal process is moving forward. She thinks she can help me get some of my professional licenses reinstated. Emma sat down beside him, her hands shaking. She needed to ask. She needed to know. But the words lodged in her throat. Are you all right? William's voice was concerned. You look pale. William, tell me about your daughter. The words came out abruptly, almost accusatory. Patricia mentioned you had a daughter. The change in William was immediate and devastating. His whole body seemed to collapse inward, and for a moment Emma thought he might cry. Emma, he whispered. My Emma. She was 8 years old the last time I saw her. Smart as a whip, kind to everyone, always bringing home stray cats and crying over sad movies. His voice broke. I destroyed our family. I made terrible choices, and by the time I got out of prison, they were gone. My wife, my ex-wife. She had every right to take our daughter away from me. What was her birthday? Emma asked, though part of her didn't want to know the answer. March 14th. Spring baby. She loved the first flowers of the season, crocuses and daffodils. William looked out at the gray water. I've thought about her every single day for 12 years. Wondered if she was happy, if she ever thought about me, if she hated me for what I did. March 14th. Emma's birthday. The birthday her mother had always celebrated with daffodils. The world narrowed to this moment. The sound of water lapping against the dock, the cry of seagulls overhead, William's profile against the winter sky. She saw it now, what she'd been seeing all along without recognizing it. The shape of his nose was her nose. The way his hands moved when he talked. The blue eyes she saw every time she looked in the mirror. William. Her voice was barely audible. Did your wife's name happen to be Catherine? He turned to look at her, confusion on his face. Yes, Catherine Maria Rodriguez. How did you? He stopped, really looked at her. She watched realization dawn across his features like sunrise. Watched hope and terror and disbelief war in his expression. No, he breathed. You can't be, you're not. Emma pulled out her wallet with trembling fingers and extracted her driver's license. My mother died when I was 12. Cancer, the death certificate said, but it was a car accident. She'd been drinking. I went to live with her mother, with Grandma Rosa. I always wondered why we moved so much when I was little. Why Mom never talked about you. Why she changed our last name back to Rodriguez after you were gone. William took the license, his hands shaking so badly he almost dropped it. He stared at the name, Emma Catherine Rodriguez, and the birth date, March 14th. Oh my God, he whispered. Oh my God, Emma. Is it really you? Tears were streaming down Emma's face now. You left your favorite book behind when you went to prison. The Little Prince. Mom kept it, even though she burned everything else that was yours. I still have it. You wrote an inscription inside. For my Emma, who teaches me every day how to see with the heart. William made a sound that was half sob, half laugh. That was the last gift I gave you, before everything went wrong. They sat there on the bench, father and daughter, staring at each other across a chasm of 12 lost years. Emma's mind reeled with the impossibility of it all. That she'd walked past him in the rain, that she'd stopped, that of all the homeless people in Portland, she'd chosen to help the one person she'd been missing her entire life. I've been so angry, Emma said through her tears, at you for leaving, at Mom for taking me away, at everyone for the empty space where my father should have been. You have every right to be angry, William said, his voice breaking. I failed you. I failed your mother. I let gambling destroy everything I loved. And I've spent every day since wishing I could go back and make different choices. But you can't go back, Emma said softly. None of us can. No, William looked down at his trembling hands. All we have is now. And I don't even know if I have the right to call you my daughter anymore. The next days were the hardest of Emma's life. She told Jade everything, and her roommate was predictably horrified. This is insane, Jade said, pacing their small living room. Emma, you don't know this man. Not really. He's been living on the streets for 7 years. He's got problems, serious problems. He's my father. He's a stranger who happens to share your DNA. Jade's voice rose. What if he's dangerous? What if he relapses with the gambling? What if you're setting yourself up to be hurt all over again? What if I'm not? Emma shot back. What if this is the universe giving us a second chance? How can I walk away from that? But doubt crept in during the sleepless nights that followed. Emma had spent 20 years building a life without her father, learning to be strong, to not need anyone, to protect her heart from disappointment. Could she let those walls down now? Could she trust this man who'd made such terrible choices? She met William 3 days after the revelation, at a neutral location, a park bench near the community center. They sat awkwardly, the weight of their shared history pressing down on them. "I don't know how to do this," Emma admitted. "I don't know how to be your daughter. I don't know how to be your father," William replied. "Not anymore. I missed everything. Your teenage years, your graduation, your first heartbreak. I don't know who you are now." "Then maybe we start there," Emma said slowly. "Maybe we start by getting to know each other. Not as father and daughter, not yet. Just as two people who want to understand each other." William nodded, hope flickering in his eyes. "I'd like that. I'd like that very much." They began meeting regularly, coffee once a week, then twice. William told her about his life before the fall, about meeting Catherine at a gallery opening, about starting his architecture firm, about the first time he'd held baby Emma in his arms. He didn't shy away from the darkness either. The gambling that had started as entertainment and became an addiction, the moment he'd taken money that wasn't his, the 3 years in prison that had taught him everything except how to forgive himself. Emma shared her life too, growing up with her mother's sadness, losing her at 12, being raised by Grandma Rosa who had loved her fiercely but never answered questions about the past. She told him about studying social work, about her passion for helping people find their way back from the edge, about all the times she'd wondered if her father ever thought of her. "Every single day," William said when she asked. "Every single moment. You were my reason for trying to get better. My reason for staying alive, even when I wanted to give up." But there were hard conversations too. About the money he'd stolen, the trust he'd broken, the years he'd spent on the streets instead of finding a way back to her. "Your mother told me to stay away," William finally confessed one cold afternoon in January. "When I got out of prison, I tried to find you. I hired a private investigator, spent everything I had left. When I finally tracked you down, Catherine made it clear, if I contacted you, if I disrupted your life, she'd get a restraining order. She said you were happy, that you didn't remember me, that showing up would only hurt you. So you just accepted that?" Emma's anger was sharp. "You just gave up? I believed I had no right to cause you more pain." William's voice was heavy with regret. "She was right about one thing. I had already hurt you enough. What kind of father was I? Criminal, an addict, a failure. I thought you deserved better." "I deserved a father," Emma said quietly. "Even a flawed one. Even one who'd made mistakes. I know that now." William met her eyes. "But 12 years ago I was drowning in shame. I couldn't see past my own failure to imagine that you might someday want to know me anyway." The turning point came in late January, during one of the worst storms Portland had seen in years. Emma was working late at the community center when her phone rang, the shelter where William was staying. "Ms. Rodriguez? It's William. He's had a fall. We've called an ambulance." Emma's heart stopped. "Is he okay? What happened?" "His tremor got worse. He's been trying to hide it, but we noticed. He missed a step on the stairs. He's conscious, but we think he might have broken his wrist." Emma arrived at the hospital to find William in the emergency room, looking small and vulnerable in a hospital gown. His right wrist was splinted, and his face was pale with pain. "I'm okay," he said when he saw her, but his voice shook. "It's just a break. I'm okay." But he wasn't okay. Emma saw it in the tremor that had worsened, in the exhaustion that lined his face, in the fear in his eyes. The doctor confirmed what Emma had suspected. William had Parkinson's disease, early stage but progressing. The stress of street life had accelerated his symptoms. "He needs stable housing," the doctor said bluntly. "Regular medication, consistent meals, less stress. Without that, his condition will deteriorate rapidly." Emma sat beside William's hospital bed after the doctor left, holding his good hand. She thought about Jade's warnings, about the risks of getting involved, about all the reasons she should protect herself. Then she thought about a man sitting in the rain, his hands trembling, too proud to ask for help. She thought about a small girl who'd grown up wondering why her father had never come back. She thought about the universe giving them both a second chance, and how rare and precious that was. "Come home with me," she said. William's eyes widened. "Emma, I couldn't." "You can and you will." Her voice was firm. "Our apartment is small, but the couch pulls out. It's not forever. Just until we get you stable, until your legal issues are resolved, until you can stand on your own again." "What about your roommate?" "What about?" "Let me worry about that." Emma squeezed his hand gently. "You're my father. I've spent 20 years without you. I'm not walking away now." William's eyes filled with tears. "I don't deserve this. I don't deserve you." "Maybe not," Emma said softly. "But you're getting it anyway. That's what family does. We show up for each other, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard." Jade, to her credit, took the news better than Emma expected. "You're sure about this?" she asked as they made up the pull-out couch with fresh sheets. "I'm terrified," Emma admitted, "but I'm sure." "Then I'm in." Jade fluffed a pillow with unnecessary force. "But if he does anything to hurt you, I'm unleashing my full wrath. And I'm very wrathful." William moved in on a Tuesday morning, carrying everything he owned in a single garbage bag. He stood in the doorway of the apartment, looking overwhelmed by the ordinary domestic scene. The mismatched furniture, the plants on the windowsill, the photos on the wall. "Welcome home, Dad," Emma said, and watched him start to cry. The next months were not easy. William's Parkinson's medication made him nauseous at first. He had nightmares about prison, about losing Emma again. Some days the tremor was so bad he couldn't hold a coffee cup. There were appointments, doctors, therapists, the legal counselor working to clear old warrants and restore his professional credentials. But there were good days too. Days when William sketched designs for the community center's renovation and Emma saw the architect he used to be. Days when they cooked dinner together, William teaching Emma his mother's recipe for pozole. Days when they sat on the couch watching old movies, and Emma could almost forget the 20 years they'd lost. Jade warmed to William gradually, won over by his quiet humor and his insistence on doing dishes despite his trembling hands. "He's growing on me," she admitted to Emma one night. "Like a fungus. A nice fungus." Patricia called in April with news. William's record had been cleared enough for him to work again. A small architecture firm downtown was willing to give him a chance, starting part-time as a design consultant. "They want to see my portfolio," William said, staring at the phone after Patricia hung up. "I don't have a portfolio. Everything I designed is gone." "Then we'll build you a new one," Emma said, "starting with that sketch you made of me. That's going in." On March 14th, Emma's 29th birthday, William gave her a gift. It was a framed architectural drawing, meticulously detailed, of a community center. Not just any community center, but a vision of what the building where Emma worked could become, expanded, modernized, but still warm and welcoming. "I've been working on it for months," William said shyly. "I thought maybe we could present it to the board together. Show them what's possible." Emma studied the drawing, the careful lines, the thoughtful spaces, the small details that made it more than just a building. A reading nook for children, a quiet garden for meditation, windows positioned to maximize natural light. It was the work of someone who understood that architecture was about more than structures. It was about creating spaces where people could heal. "Dad," she whispered, using the word deliberately. "This is beautiful. You're brilliant." "I had good inspiration," William said, his eyes bright. "I designed it thinking about you, about the work you do, about giving back some of what you've given me." They presented the design to the community center board in May. Emma talked about the need and William talked about the vision. The board was skeptical at first, until they looked closely at William's plans, until they saw the genius in his use of space, until they realized they were looking at something extraordinary. "This is remarkable work, Mr. Rodriguez," the board chair said. "Where have you been practicing?" William glanced at Emma, then back at the board. "I've been away for a while. This is my first project back. The board approved the design pending funding. William was hired as the project architect, part-time at first, but with the possibility of more. It wasn't everything back, but it was a beginning. Summer came, and with it, healing. William moved into his own small apartment. Nothing fancy, but it had a desk by the window where he could draw. His tremor stabilized on new medication. He started attending a support group for recovering addicts, facing his demons with the same quiet determination he brought to everything else. Emma learned to call him Dad without hesitation. Learned that forgiveness wasn't a single moment but a daily choice. Learned that family wasn't about being perfect. It was about showing up, trying again, choosing love over fear. They had dinner every Sunday, Emma, William, and Jade, who'd become part of their small, strange family. They talked about everything and nothing. They laughed at Jade's terrible jokes. They remembered Catherine, Emma's mother, William's ex-wife, with both sadness and gratitude for the years she'd protected Emma in the only way she knew how. On one of these Sunday evenings, as they sat around Emma's small dining table with the remains of dinner spread before them, William told them something he'd been holding back. "When I was on the streets," he said quietly, "I used to pray. I'm not a religious man. I lost faith in God about the same time I lost everything else. But I prayed anyway. I prayed that somehow, before I died, I'd see Emma one more time. Just once. Just to tell her I was sorry. To tell her I loved her." His voice cracked. "And then one night, she walked past me in the rain. Of all the people in this city, of all the doorways I could have been sitting in, she found me. She stopped. She saw me." Emma reached across the table and took his hand. "Steady now, both of them steady." "I found you too, Dad," she said. "We found each other." The community center renovation began in September. William worked closely with the contractors. Emma watched the building transform, and Jay documented everything for social media. The project attracted attention. A feel-good story about a homeless man who'd become an architect again. About a daughter who'd helped her father rebuild his life. News crews came. William gave interviews, talking honestly about addiction, about hitting bottom, about the long climb back. He talked about Emma, about her kindness that cold November night, about how she'd saved him without even knowing who he was. "She's the bravest person I know," William told one reporter. "She took a chance on a stranger. And even when she learned the truth, learned that I'd failed her mother, failed my family, spent years making the worst choices possible, she took a chance on me again. That's real courage. That's real love." Emma watched the interview from the construction site, tears streaming down her face. She thought about the man she'd met in the rain, about the father she'd been searching for her whole life, about the strange and beautiful way the universe sometimes gave you exactly what you needed in the most unexpected package. The community center reopened in December, exactly 1 year after Emma had found William in that doorway. The building was transformed, bright and warm and welcoming, with spaces for healing and hope. William's vision had become reality. At the opening ceremony, Emma stood at the podium and looked out at the crowd. People from the neighborhood, staff from the center, board members, reporters, and former residents who'd found help and hope in this place. "A year ago," she began, "I made what seemed like a small choice. I stopped to help a homeless man in the rain. I bought him dinner. I offered him kindness without knowing anything about him." She found William in the crowd, standing near the back with Jade beside him. "I didn't know that choice would change my life, that the stranger in the doorway was the father I'd been missing for 20 years. That buying someone a meal would lead to this." She gestured at the renovated building. "To family, to healing, to hope." Her voice grew stronger. "But that's the thing about kindness. We never know where it will lead. We never know who we might be helping. That homeless person could be someone's son, someone's father, someone's lost family member trying to find their way home." William was crying openly now, and Emma was too. "My father designed this building thinking about second chances, about creating spaces where people can become themselves again, where people can heal, where people can find their way back from the darkness. She smiled through her tears. This center isn't just a building. It's a promise that everyone deserves a second chance, that it's never too late to come home, that kindness matters even when, especially when we don't know where it will lead. The crowd erupted in applause. William made his way to the front, and Emma met him halfway. They embraced. Father and daughter, architect and social worker. Two people who'd found each other in the most impossible way. "Thank you," William whispered against her hair, "for seeing me, for saving me, for bringing me home. Thank you for waiting," Emma whispered back, "for surviving, for being here." 2 years later, Emma stood in a different doorway, the entrance to Rodriguez and Rodriguez Architecture, a small firm in a converted warehouse downtown. The sign above the door gleamed in the morning sun. William was inside, at his drafting table, working on designs for a new homeless shelter. His tremor was managed now, his life stable, his reputation slowly rebuilding. They'd started the firm together 6 months ago, Emma handling the business side, William the design work, both of them focusing on projects that gave back to the community. It wasn't a fairy tale. William still had bad days when the Parkinson's flared up, when the memories of his years on the street haunted him. Emma still struggled with anger sometimes, with the lost years, with the what-ifs that could drive you crazy if you let them. But they were family. They showed up for each other. They chose love over fear, again and again, day after day. Emma thought about that night in the rain, how close she'd come to walking past, to being too busy, too cold, too convinced that one person couldn't make a difference. How one small act of kindness had unfolded into this life she never could have imagined. She'd learned something profound in those 2 years, that we're all connected in ways we can't see, that every interaction matters, that the stranger on the street might be the very person you've been searching for all along. Kindness wasn't just about helping others. It was about staying open to the possibility of miracles. It was about believing that we're all worthy of love and second chances, even when we've made mistakes, even when we've lost our way. It was about recognizing that sometimes the person you save might be saving you right back. In a world that often feels cold and disconnected, Emma and William's story reminds us of a simple truth. We never know whose life we might change with a single act of compassion. The homeless person on the corner might be someone's lost family member. The stranger in need might be the answer to someone's prayers. Every person has a story. Every person was once someone's baby, someone's hope, someone's dream. When we stop to help, when we choose to see each other's humanity, we don't just change one life, we change the world, one connection at a time. Emma helped a homeless man not knowing he was her father. But even if he hadn't been, the kindness would have mattered. The meal would have mattered. The moment of being seen would have mattered. That's the real miracle. Not the impossible coincidence of finding her father, but the choice to stop it all. The choice to look into the face of someone society had deemed invisible and say, "You matter. I see you." We all have the power to be someone's miracle. We all have the power to change a life. Sometimes that change starts with something as simple as a cup of coffee, a warm meal, a moment of human connection. The question isn't whether we can make a difference. The question is whether we'll choose to try. Emma and William's story isn't just about a remarkable reunion. It's about the thousands of small choices that led to that moment. The choice to stop in the rain, to sit in a diner, to listen, to care, to keep showing up even when it would have been easier to walk away. It's about the courage it takes to open your heart to someone the world has dismissed. The strength it takes to forgive, both others and yourself. The faith it takes to believe that broken things can be mended, that lost people can be found, that it's never too late to come home. William spent 7 years believing he'd lost everything that mattered. Emma spent 20 years carrying the weight of abandonment. Both of them were right in a way, but they were also profoundly wrong. Because nothing is ever truly lost while there's still breath in our lungs and love in our hearts. The universe has a strange sense of poetry. It takes what we think is coincidence and reveals it as destiny. It takes what we think is ending and shows us it was always just a beginning. But the universe can only work its magic when we do our part. When we choose compassion over convenience, connection over self-protection, hope over cynicism. 5 years later, the documentary premiered at a small film festival in Portland. Jade had been working on it for 2 years, a film about second chances, about the hidden epidemic of homelessness among people who'd once had careers and families and futures. At its heart was William and Emma's story. The theater was packed. Emma sat between William and his girlfriend, Patricia. Yes, that Patricia, the legal counselor who'd helped uncover their connection. They'd been dating for 3 years now, a relationship built on honesty and hard-won wisdom. The film opened with footage of Portland streets on a rainy night. Then Emma's voice began the narration. When I was 8 years old, my father disappeared from my life. When I was 28, I found him sleeping in a doorway. I didn't recognize him. The streets had changed him that much. But somehow, I stopped anyway. The film wove together their story with interviews from others. People William had met on the streets who'd since found housing, clients of the community center who'd benefited from the renovation, formerly homeless individuals who'd turned their lives around. But it also didn't shy away from the harder truths. It showed William talking about his gambling addiction, about the choices that had cost him everything. It showed Emma talking about the anger she'd had to work through, the trust that had to be rebuilt brick by brick. People want simple stories, Emma said in the film. They want to hear that love conquers all, that one act of kindness fixes everything. But real life is messier than that. Healing takes time. Forgiveness takes work. Second chances have to be earned by everyone involved. The film showed William at his worst. Shaking, scared, broken by years of street life. But it also showed him at his best. Bent over a drafting table, his trembling hands creating beauty, his mind still sharp despite everything he'd endured. It showed Emma learning to be a daughter again. Learning that you could hold two truths at once. You could love someone and be angry at them. You could forgive someone without forgetting what they'd done. Near the end, there was a scene of Emma and William sitting in the completed community center. In the reading nook he'd designed, surrounded by children from the neighborhood. Tell us a story, one little girl demanded, climbing into William's lap with the fearlessness of a child who'd never learned to see age or status or past mistakes. William looked at Emma, and she nodded. Once upon a time, he began, there was a man who lost his way. He made bad choices and hurt the people he loved most. He lost his home, his work, his family. He thought his story was over. The children listened, wide-eyed. But then one rainy night someone stopped. Someone saw him when everyone else walked past. Someone chose to be kind when they didn't have to be. And that kindness, it changed everything. Did he find his family again? Another child asked. William's eyes found Emma's across the room. He did, in the most magical, impossible way. His daughter saved him, without even knowing she was saving her own father. That's like a fairy tale, the first girl exclaimed. It is, William agreed. Except it's better than a fairy tale because it's real. And the magic isn't in the coincidence, the magic is in the choice. The choice to stop, the choice to care, the choice to believe that everyone deserves a second chance. The film ended with current footage, William at work in the firm's office, Emma leading a training session at the community center. Both of them having dinner at Emma's apartment with Jade and Patricia and a handful of friends who'd become family. We can't control the circumstances that break us, Emma's voiceover concluded. We can't undo the past or change the choices we've made. But we can control what we do next. We can choose kindness. We can choose to see each other. We can choose to believe in second chances, for others and for ourselves. The screen faded to black with one final message. There are over 580,000 people experiencing homelessness in America. Each one has a story. Each one is someone's child, someone's parent, someone's lost love. Each one deserves to be seen. The lights came up in the theater. There wasn't a dry eye in the house. The applause started slowly, then built to a crescendo. Emma stood, pulling William up with her. Jade bounded onto the stage, purple hair flying, grinning like the Cheshire Cat. They stood together, the filmmaker, the social worker, and the architect, three people whose lives had been transformed by one act of kindness on one rainy night. During the Q&A that followed, a young woman in the audience raised her hand. "I walk past homeless people every day on my way to work," she said, her voice shaking. "I always feel guilty, but I never stop. I tell myself I don't have time, or it's not safe, or I can't help everyone. After watching your film, I feel like I've been making excuses." Emma leaned forward. "I'm not going to tell you that you have to stop for every person you see. That's not realistic, and it's not safe for everyone in every situation. But I will tell you this. If you feel moved to help someone, trust that instinct. It doesn't have to be money. It can be a meal, a conversation, a referral to services. It can be eye contact and a smile, acknowledgement that they exist." William added, "When you're homeless, the worst part isn't hunger or cold. It's invisibility. People look through you like you're already a ghost." Emma saw me. That mattered more than the meal she bought, though that mattered too. She reminded me I was human. She gave me back my dignity before she ever gave me anything else. Another hand went up, an older man with tears on his cheeks. "I lost my son to addiction 5 years ago. He's been on the streets somewhere, and I haven't been able to find him. Your story gives me hope that maybe someone out there is showing him kindness. Maybe someone is seeing him the way Emma saw you." The theater went silent. William stood slowly and made his way down to where the man sat. He took the man's hands in his trembling ones. "Someone is," William said with quiet certainty. "Somewhere, right now, someone is stopping for your son. Someone is choosing to see him. Don't give up hope, and don't give up looking, because I promise you, he needs to know you haven't given up on him." The man broke down sobbing, and William held him while he cried. Emma watched from the stage, her heart full to bursting, understanding in that moment why they'd gone through everything they'd gone through. It wasn't just for them. It was for everyone who needed to believe that broken things could be mended, that lost people could be found, that it was never, ever too late for redemption. After the screening, outside the theater, Emma and William stood together in the cool evening air. 5 years had passed since that night in the rain. 5 years of hard work, of therapy, of rebuilding trust and creating a relationship from scratch. William was 62 now, his beard fully gray, but his eyes were clear and bright. The tremor in his hands was still there. It always would be, but it no longer defined him. He was an architect again, a father again, a man who'd faced his demons and come out the other side. Emma was 33, more confident than she'd been at 28, more certain of who she was and what mattered. She'd learned that strength wasn't about never needing anyone. It was about having the courage to be vulnerable, to let people in, to risk your heart even when you'd been hurt before. "You know what I think about sometimes?" William said, watching people file out of the theater, many of them still wiping their eyes. "I think about all the people who walked past me those 7 years. Hundreds of them, thousands, maybe, and I don't blame any of them. They had their own lives, their own problems. They didn't owe me anything." He turned to Emma. "But you stopped. Out of all those thousands of people, you stopped. And I've spent 5 years trying to understand why. What made you different? What made you see me when everyone else looked away?" Emma considered the question. She'd asked herself the same thing countless times. "I think," she said slowly, "it's because Grandma Rosa taught me something important. She used to say that we're all just walking each other home, that none of us get through this life alone, that the only thing that really matters at the end of the day is how we treat each other." She smiled. "And I think it's because, on some level I didn't understand then, I was looking for you. I'd been looking for you my whole life. My heart recognized you before my mind did. Do you really believe that? William asked softly. That it was more than coincidence? I don't know, Emma admitted. Maybe it was random chance. Maybe it was fate. Maybe it doesn't matter which. What matters is that we both made choices that night. You accepted help even though it hurt your pride. I offered help even though I was tired and cold and had my own problems. And those choices, they led us here. She gestured at the theater, at the people streaming out, at the world they'd built together from the ashes of the old one. That's what I want people to take from our story. Not that miracles happen, though sometimes they do, but that we create miracles through our choices, through our willingness to be kind even when it's inconvenient, through our willingness to see each other's humanity, even when it's uncomfortable. William pulled Emma into a hug, and she rested her head on his shoulder the way she had when she was 8 years old, before the world broke them apart. Thank you, he whispered, for stopping, for seeing me, for giving me back my life. Thank you for being worth saving, Emma whispered back, for doing the work, for becoming the father I always needed. They stood there as the streets slowly emptied, as the lights of the city twinkled around them, as the universe hummed with the quiet satisfaction of a story come full circle. The documentary changed things. It won awards at festivals, got picked up by a streaming service, sparked conversations about homelessness and addiction and second chances. But more than that, it changed individual hearts. People wrote to Emma and William by the hundreds, stories of their own lost family members, their own struggles with addiction or mental illness or bad luck that had spiraled into homelessness. Others wrote about being inspired to volunteer at shelters, to stop and talk to homeless individuals, to donate to organizations working to end homelessness. One woman wrote that she'd been estranged from her own father for 15 years, and the film had given her the courage to reach out. William and Emma started giving talks at conferences, at universities, at community centers. They were always honest about the difficulty of their journey, about the work recovery required, about the complexity of forgiveness. This isn't a fairy tale where everything is perfect now, Emma always made sure to say. My dad and I still have hard days. We still work through resentments and disappointments, but we do it together. We keep choosing each other, even when it's hard. Rodriguez and Rodriguez Architecture thrived. They specialized in affordable housing, in shelters, in spaces designed to restore dignity to people who'd lost everything. William's lived experience made him uniquely qualified to design for people experiencing homelessness. He understood what they needed in ways architects who'd never slept on the streets never could. The community center became a model for other cities. The design, with its warm, welcoming spaces, its emphasis on natural light and privacy, its thoughtful attention to what people needed to heal, was replicated across the country. Emma continued her social work, but now she also trained other social workers, teaching them to see past circumstances to the person beneath. Everyone has a story, she told them. Everyone was someone before they became homeless. Our job is to help them remember who they are, to help them believe they can be that person again. 10 years later, Emma's son, William's grandson, was born on a snowy January morning. They named him James William Rodriguez after both his grandfathers. William held the baby in his trembling arms, tears streaming down his weathered face. "Hello, James," he whispered. "I'm your grandfather. I'm going to tell you stories about your great-grandmother and your grandmother Catherine. I'm going to tell you about the mistakes I made and the lessons I learned. And I'm going to make sure you know how your mother saved my life." Emma watched from the hospital bed, her husband Diego beside her, and felt the circle complete itself. Her son would never wonder about his grandfather. He would grow up knowing William, knowing his kindness, his talent, his hard-won wisdom, his trembling hands that created beauty despite everything. He would grow up with the story of how his mother had helped a homeless man and discovered her father. He would grow up understanding that everyone deserves a second chance, that kindness matters, that we're all connected in ways we can't always see. As the family gathered around the baby, William, Patricia, Jade, who was now James's godmother, Diego's parents, friends who'd become family, Emma thought about that night in the rain 10 years ago. She thought about how close she'd come to walking past. How one small choice had unfolded into this life she never could have imagined. This family, this love, this beautiful, complicated, miraculous mess of second chances and hard-won healing. Thank you, she whispered to the universe, to fate, to whatever force had guided her feet that rainy November night. Thank you for making me stop. Thank you for bringing him back to me. William looked up from the baby and met her eyes. In his gaze, she saw everything they'd been through, the pain and the healing, the anger and the forgiveness, the years lost and the years found. But most of all, she saw love. The kind of love that survives anything. The kind of love that says, I see you, I choose you, I'm not walking away. The kind of love that, once upon a time, had stopped for a stranger in the rain. 10 years, 20 years, 50 years from now, Emma will tell her son about the night she met his grandfather. She'll tell him about the rain, the doorway, the trembling hands, the striking blue eyes that should have looked familiar but didn't. She'll tell him about the moment of recognition, about the impossible coincidence that was really a miracle, about the long journey of rebuilding trust and learning to be family again. But most importantly, she'll tell him this: we don't know whose life we're going to change when we choose kindness. We don't know if the person we help will turn out to be someone special to us, someone famous, someone who'll change the world. Most of the time, they won't be. Most of the time, they'll just be a person who needed help in that moment. She'll lean close, making sure he understands. And that's exactly the point. We don't help people because of who they might be to us. We help people because of who we want to be. Because in a world that can be so cold and cruel, we have the power to be warmth. We have the power to be light. We have the power to look at someone the world has forgotten and say, I see you. You matter. She'll tell him that this is what it means to be human, to recognize our shared vulnerability, our shared dignity, our shared need to be seen and valued. She'll tell him that his grandfather spent 7 years invisible before she saw him. 7 years of people walking past, looking through him, treating him like he'd already ceased to exist. And baby, she'll say, anyone could have stopped. Anyone could have been the one to see him, to help him, to start him on the path back home. But I was the one who did. And that changed everything, not just for him, not just for me, but for you too. Because you exist because I stopped. Because kindness ripples out in ways we can never predict. This is the truth that Emma and William's story teaches us. We are all connected. The stranger on the street could be someone's father, someone's child, someone's answered prayer. But even if they're not, even if they're just a stranger who'll remain a stranger, they still deserve our compassion. Because ultimately, this story isn't about the miracle of Emma finding her father. It's about the miracle that happens every time one human being truly sees another. Every time someone chooses compassion over convenience. Every time someone stops in the rain. That's the real miracle. That's the real magic. And it's available to us all every single day, in every moment when we choose to see each other's humanity. All we have to do is stop. All we have to do is see. All we have to do is care enough to try. The rest, the healing, the hope, the coming home, flows from that one simple choice. A choice that's available to each of us right now in this moment. The choice to be kind. The choice that changes everything.